Hi guys, and welcome. I am so sorry it's taken me so long to get another video up, but been a busy bee. However, I return today with the next instalment of Business News Review Monthly. Now, actually, I'm going to incorporate more than a month's worth here, but I'm going to actually omit one or two editions of the Sunday Times business pages because I'm going to try and keep this focused on articles which GCSE and A-level economists would most benefit from. So the articles which are most pertinent and most relevant to you. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's get straight in here. So this is from December the 30th, and there is just one article actually in this particular edition which I'm going to refer you to, if I can find it. And here we go. And the title of this one is How the Mighty Have Fallen. And you can see here there is a picture of Sir Martin Sorrell, who of course was ousted from the marketing company WPP. Now the reason, ladies and gentlemen, that this is particularly important is because it is all about business ethics. And my students go regularly to the Newcastle Business School at Northumbria University, where we engage in discussion and debate all about business ethics. Indeed, we're hosting a debating competition in a few weeks' time about single-use plastics, but that's another issue. If you'd like to come along, by the way, follow me on Twitter and you'll be able to find that. But I just wanted to point out, this has been quite a year really with regard to business ethics. A number of high-profile figures have fallen on their swords for misdemeanors of varying degrees of seriousness and various indiscretions, shall we say. So we had the whole Carillion debacle at the beginning of the year. That was followed up by an inquiry into the big four accountancy firms because KPMG was Carillion's accountant and thought maybe that they hadn't been doing a good enough job there on the whole auditing of the accounts. Then we had, quite recently, Patisserie Valerie thought it could be saved. No, it's not going to be saved. And again, there were issues there with Grant Thornton, auditors. Then we had also the news about Sir Martin Sorrell falling on his sword because apparently he was using money for inappropriate extracurricular activities, shall we say. Then we had Jeff Fairburn at Persimmon Homes. And he was awarded, if you recall, that enormous 100 million bonus, and then it was reduced down to 75, but in the end he had to go. We had the collapse of House of Fraser, and then more recently we have had Sir Philip Green, owner of Topshop, just celebrated his 65th birthday, I believe, in a rather low-key fashion when you compare it with his 50th birthday celebrations, where he flew several, I think it was a couple of hundred people maybe, out to his birthday party where guests included Naomi Campbell and entertainers were pop stars and so on and so forth. But again, he's under pressure at the moment because he's been outed as instigator of numerous non-disclosure agreements, and that can only be bad news, one would think. So that's the first edition, ladies and gentlemen. Let me now flick to the second one. So the next one I'm moving on to is from January the 13th. So as I said, I'm not going to be looking at articles from each edition. Okay, the first one here is from a real favourite of ours, and it's by Tommy Stubbington, and so this is an economics article, and it's all to do with inflation. And the title of the article is Rate Rises Hang in the Balance as Inflation Hits a 2-year Low. Now, you will know that inflation is its lowest for 2 years, CPI 2.1%. The primary cause of that has been cheap oil prices, and that of course is driving petrol pump prices down, and to the benefit of course to all car users, although maybe not doing much for the car industry, but we'll come on to that shortly. Now they reckon, let's get the trusty marker out here, they reckon that a Brexit deal will actually be good news for UK inflation and hopefully stave off any rate rises in the coming months. Possibly we'll have a quarter point rate rise in 2019, but they're not pricing in any further rises than that. Now, why would a Brexit deal be good? The likelihood, of course, of a Brexit deal is diminishing by the day, but let's ignore that for the time being. If there's a Brexit deal, then in terms of exchange rates, that will be good, of course, because it will inspire confidence in the UK economy. Demand for sterling will go up, so we should maybe see a little bit of a rebound in the exchange rate, moving up from E1 to E2, so we'll have a little bit of an appreciation there. Now, for an island nation like the UK, where we're importing so many of our raw materials, so many goods and services, well, an appreciation of sterling will be a good thing, because import prices, of course, will then be reduced. And maybe that'll help to recover some of the lost ground in sterling. Those of you who've been on holiday in America recently, some of my students travelling business class to the States recently, well, they found that they're not getting so many dollars for their UK pound because the UK sterling has been on the slide in the American dollar. Okay, that's it on inflation, ladies and gentlemen. Let's move on. Next one. If you can see it here. It's a complete car crash, even before we get to Brexit. Now, this is about what an industry, ladies and gentlemen. Let's bear in mind that manufacturing in the UK now only accounts for 2% of the UK economy. So, in relative terms, it's a relatively small slice of the pie. However, the UK car industry used to be one of their shining lights. But recent news in the UK car industry has been terrible, hasn't it? And I'll talk a little bit more about our recent trip to Nissan shortly. But UK motor industry, Jaguar Land Rover, talking about cutting jobs. Ford Europe, talking about a restructuring, cutting jobs. Nissan just received the news last week that in spite of government guarantees in 2016 that they would not be affected by Brexit, and therefore would they still build their Nissan X-Trail SUV in Sunderland, which would require an expansion of the factory, more employment for the northeast. That has all been shelved, and primarily because of falling demand in China and the luxury car brands particularly feeling the heat there, falling demand for diesel vehicles, and just a number of unpopular models as well. And all of this is leading to a bit of a debacle in the UK car industry. It says here that the UK used to be able to rely upon supernormal Chinese profits, but now that the Chinese economy is starting to slow, that is no longer the case, ladies and gentlemen. So an interesting one there on the UK car industry, structure of the UK, this notion of rebalancing the UK economy as well, very important. Okay, let's see if we've got anything else in this particular edition. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, for the shoddy presentation here. I think that's it on that one. Yeah, it is. Okay, so that's that one. Let's move on to the third one. So this is January 27th. Okay, let's start off. What have we got here? UK growth eclipses the ailing Eurozone. Now, UK growth's nothing to write home about, so let's not get too excited by that. But quarter four, Eurozone growth 0.2%. The UK's was 0.3%, I believe. Italy, Germany, flirting with recession. February the 17th is a very big day for the European Union in terms of car industry and car market, because, of course, President Trump is going to, or certainly has intimated that he will implement and introduce tariffs on EU cars into the States. And again, that we've just talked about the dire straits in the UK car industry. Well, that would hit even further. So that's that one. Fashion chain Peacocks squeezes suppliers. Nice little article here, really, ladies and gentlemen, about monopoly power and the ability of the monopolist to really squeeze the suppliers. We've talked about this with oligopolies in the past, whereby the big supermarket chains put the real squeeze on their suppliers and just they pay the bare minimum but expect the very best. Well, what have Peacock's done? They have said that they're going to increase the time it takes for them to pay their suppliers from 90 days to 130 days. I mean, that really does take the biscuit, ladies and gentlemen, doesn't it? And this is all at a time when the retail sector in generally, as Mike Ashley said, the high street is dead, the retail sector is already feeling the squeeze, and now the retailers are putting the squeeze on the suppliers. So it's a chain reaction, isn't it? The retailer feels the squeeze because of lack of footfall, so they then put the squeeze on the person beneath them, and so the chain reaction continues. I'm in the middle of a chain reaction, said Diana Ross. Okay, next one. Trump shut down a nasty flu that cost $6 billion. So President Donald Trump wanted, of course, $5.6 billion in order to build the wall. And for that, he shut down the US government, many parts of it, for, how long did he shut it down for? The longest in US history, that's how long, can't remember how many weeks it was. But that, they reckon, has cost the US economy $6 billion. So it's cost more than what he's asking for in terms of money for the wall. Some interesting aside. Okay, next one. This was an interesting one, and those of you who watch Question Time, it was the subject of quite an extended discussion on Question Time with regard to this man here. It's James Dyson, and it's talking about the fact that he is moving, and the clever title here, How Singapore Sucked in Dyson. So he's moving production and research and all that type of thing across to Singapore. And it highlights all sorts of things. But one of the interesting things about it, certainly for my students, we're about to move into sort of international trade and trading blocks and that type of thing. Well, Singapore is a member of the Asian bloc, that's ASEAN, and as a consequence will be subject to special treatment with regard to trade and movement of goods and services and so on. And that is one reason why they reckon that Sir James Dyson is moving. It also talks about so I'll just read you briefly a little bit of this, but the Singapore government keeps taxes low. Corporation tax is 17%, but can be cut to 8.5% with exemptions and incentives. So there are all sorts of reasons why it may be prudent at this time to move that plant across to Singapore. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm all fingers and thumbs here. Let me just move on to the next little article here, if I can actually turn the page. Okay, that could be it, ladies and gents. Could be it for this one, which means there's just one final one to do. Okay, just one last one, ladies and gents. Okay, this is from February the 3rd, so just a couple of days ago. So again, my eye was drawn to the first article here. Nissan abandons SUV launch for Sunderland. So I'm mentioning this again, obviously being very close to the Nissan plant, knowing a lot of people who work there, a few triathlon pals who work there. Also, of course, having just recently visited there with my Year 10 students, you know, the talks here about Britain's battered car industry. And whilst they guarantee jobs that are currently there, I mean, it's not exactly a sign of confidence, is it? And it's not bringing any new additional jobs, which of course was hoped had the SUV build gone ahead. So that's that. And quick click through. See what else we've got in here of particular pertinence and relevance to you GCSE and A-level students. I think that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so I hope that's been of some use, ladies and gents. Thank you for subscribing. If you've watched all the way to the end of this video and you don't subscribe, then please do hit that subscribe button. Do follow me on other social media, Twitter @G_Economics. Follow my website, Follow me on LinkedIn, all sorts of different places to keep you up to date. Instagram also, to keep you up to date with the latest goings on in economics, particularly for OCR students. And yeah, I think, get along and follow. Thumbs up.